Hello, my name is Josh Taboga, and I recently earned my MA degree in the Global and Area Studies program and Environment and Natural Resources. Today I will be talking about my field research and thesis work, which is entitled, Will Germans Give Up the Mercedes?, focusing on Freiburg's green transportation model. On the left, we have a picture of a normal city street, bustling with automobiles, stinky, dangerous, and so on. This one happens to be in Stuttgart, Germany, which is the Detroit of the country, home to Mercedes. On the right, this is a typical city street in Freiburg's Vauban district. As you can see, there are no cars, not even parking on the side of the street, and the kids are just free to play in the middle of the street without fear of being squashed by vehicles. So I wanted to know, how did this happen? Just to give you a quick overview, here's a map of the Vauban district. It's roughly 90 acres. It's home to 5,000 people. And the street where the kids were playing was one of these U-shaped streets where the speed limit is 3 miles per hour and there's no parking. And there's really not much of a reason for a vehicle to enter these street areas. So, I have a timeline here. The Vauban area used to be a military complex. It was occupied by the French after World War II. In 1992, they decided that they were going to leave, however. And the city of Freiburg itself was suffering from a chronic housing shortage. And so the city resolved to buy the land from the federal government and turn it into a high-density district. Now, within this whole thing, there were two main stakeholders. The Forum Vauban, which was a grassroots movement that really pushed for incredibly progressive, sustainable ideas to be present in this neighborhood, and then the city of Freiburg in Breisgau. So in 1994, the city decided to basically open up the decision-making process for this piece of land to the public, and that's where the Forum Vauban came from. In 1995, the city officially recognized them as the representatives of the citizen participation movement. In 1996, there are a couple of turning points that I'll talk about. In 98, construction started. In 99, people started moving in, and the neighborhood was eventually finished in 2006. Well, during the Vauban debate, there was a lot of common ground, as you can see here. The city and the Forum Vauban wanted to see a high-density work-live mixed district, so you could have services in the area while also having people live in this area. Now, the most controversial topic of all was how people would get around within the neighborhood, as well as leave the neighborhood to go to other places within the city. So it's the mobility concept. What the city wanted to do, as far as the mobility concept would go, was a standard conventional concept where you would have front door parking. You would support car ownership, but reduce car use overall by traffic calming, by basically increasing the use of public transport. Well, the Forum's concept was a bit different. They wanted to see a car-reduced district that would mean a mix of car ownership and non-car ownership, and there were a couple of things that were really in their way for that. The idea would basically decouple parking from housing physically and economically. And so people who did not own a vehicle could actually save money because a parking spot would not be built for them. Other benefits would be the obvious environmental benefits, fewer emissions from vehicles, less noise pollution, but then also the social benefits. The idea was to reclaim the streets as a mixed area where people could actually use it for living, right? Now, the obstacles in this, there were two such obstacles. And the first one was the Baden-Württembergische Landesbauordnung, which was a state law that stipulated every household is required to have at least one parking spot built for it. This essentially made the forum's concept illegal. Now, how they wanted to make it legal, the Forum Vauban negotiated with the city. Because this was a state law, the city could do nothing to change it, but there was a compromise where the forum agreed to establish an overseer of car freeness, and these people, this organization, would have the car-free residents sign a contract that they would remain car-free, but it also gave them some benefits where they would pay less. They would not have to pay for a parking spot, but they would pay a little bit of money to preserve a plot of land on the periphery of the neighborhood. And this plot of land was there just to reassure the city that if everything went south and the concept failed, then they would have a spot to build a parking garage. Well, the next hurdle was just convincing the city and the people in the city that this is a good idea and that it's a feasible concept. Well, the Forum Vauban used a media campaign to spread the word, and they had quite an enthusiastic response. They had more than 1,000 letters declaring, I want to live there, I want to buy there, this is a fantastic idea. But the media campaign also provided advice, and so it made sure that this concept was implemented smoothly, where people would understand what the stipulations of their agreements are if they want to be car-free. This media also helped bring a little bit of international attention as well. The Forum Vauban applied to the UN Habitat II conference in Istanbul, which took place in 1996 and consequently won best practice. Well, the mayor of the city, who was not on board with the Forum Vauban's mobility concept, went to Istanbul to receive the prize, and in his absence, the city council, under pressure from the Vauban, actually passed these stipulations that would allow the neighborhood to be car-free to a certain extent. So no parking on the streets, for example. Now, what you get out of this is, here's another map of the Vauban, is a largely parking-free district where people who live without vehicles can live there for cheaper. It's more feasible for them to do so, and that's this purple area right here. You have a mix of really interesting sustainability ideas, such as renewable energies, but the focus of this all is the fact that these streets are actually living streets. So you can spend a lot of your time there without yielding to vehicles, in fact, when it's the opposite. So I learned that the definitions were important. The Forum Vauban, learning from prior concepts that tried to go car-free, noticed that they had to basically deem the neighborhood as car-reduced, and the car-free would apply to the people only. Now, this allowed a lot of flexibility, and it was important for them to communicate that. You could own a car, it would cost you more money. You can get rid of your car once you live in the neighborhood, and it would save you more money, and you could sell your parking spot. If you don't have a car and you want one, then you can move in that direction too. So there is that flexibility. The last important thing is that funding was incredibly important. The city of Freiburg actually provided the initial funds for the Forum Vauban to conduct their media campaign, which attracted all of this interest and support, which eventually put pressure on the city to accept this concept. The Forum Vauban also received money from the German Environmental Foundation as well as the EU LIFE project, which supports sustainability initiatives. Now there's also the question of transferability. Can you transfer this concept to other places? I can assume actually that it would have to be another high density area where public transport is abundant. So you have to have these alternatives as well as sometimes sunnier weather in order to make something like this a bit more appealing to the people. So this project was made with generous support from the Center for Global Studies, the Dick and Lynn Cheney Study Abroad grant, as well as many other grants and scholarships. Thank you.